This should be played at high volume.
Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
Welcome to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. This is your lunch break stop, a nice four-person roundtable, and we're talking March Madness today. We're sponsored by DraftKings. The wait is over. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of NASCAR and is now live in North Carolina. Now you can legally bet on all your favorite sports anytime, anywhere, right here in North Carolina with DraftKings. For a limited time, new customers who sign up with promo code Tobacco Road and bet $5 will receive $250 instantly in bonus bets. DraftKings has the best features, including same-game parlays, player props, and more with fast and easy payouts right at your fingertips. We have the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix this Sunday. Tyler Reddick's currently at plus 450 to win. Chase Elliott at plus 750. William Byron and Christopher Bell at plus 1,000. You can bet on winner, top 3, top 5. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now using code Tobacco Road and bet $5 to get $250 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code Tobacco Road. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 877-718-5543 or visit morethanagame.nc.gov. 21 plus, North Carolina only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook/NC. NASCAR is not sponsored of this promotion and used under license. But guys, it is March Madness time. It tips off this afternoon. That's why we had to move Outta Pocket to 11:30. Be sure we can talk about it. Make sure we're not interrupting your March Madness time because we know you guys appreciate it. We're joined today by Isaac Schade from the Locked On Heels and Locked On College Basketball podcast, joined by Aaron Schneider. You've seen him on several Outta Pockets before, had a lot of Outta Pocket takes from time to time. And then we have producer Desmond Johnson, who is excited to see his Tar Heels play today. And UNC plays number 16 seed Wagner. Wagner was one of the first 4 in, which I have an opinion about. I might touch on that a little later on. But Carolina's playing a 16 seed. We've only seen, I believe, only 1 or 2 1 seeds fall. We've seen 2. The first one was Virginia against UMBC. Isaac's sharing some balloons on
I don't know what
YouTube
that.
feed.
I think it was some AI thing that just happened when I gave the 2.
Well, wish Isaac a happy birthday. It might not be his birthday, but if you saw the balloons on the YouTube feed, you can comment on our YouTube channel and your comment can pop up on the screen. Isaac, I'll start with you because you follow this team pretty consistently with the Locked On Heels podcast. What does this team need to do against a 16 seed Wagner and not to overlook them?
That's a great question. What a great story Wagner is, man. Seven scholarship players since February, basically, had to go on the road to beat Sacred Heart, the 3 seed, Central Connecticut, the 1 seed, and Merrimack, the 2 seed, all on the road in their conference tournament just to get here and then win in the slashy game. I've stopped calling them play-in games. I like to call them slashy games. But what a crazy story. It's so cool. Like one of those March Madness, this is awesome. Now, for Carolina, obviously it's one of those moments where you want to play your game. I love how Jay Billis put it in the ACC quarterfinals when Carolina was playing Florida State. He said this is an elite program with a blue-collar mentality. I've tried to make it a little more poetic. I've been saying it's a blue blood program with a blue-collar mentality. And I just need to see that every single game that they get to keep playing. And that starts today against Wagner, right? I don't fear Carolina overlooking them. It's not a trap game, nothing like that, because win or go home. This is it for Armando Bacot, for Cormac Ryan, for Paxton Wojcik, all of those dudes. So I think that's what they've got to do to not overlook this team, be the aggressors that they've been all season long.
As a Duke fan, when you said that it's the last run for Armando Bacot, I was like, phew. And Cormac Ryan, I am
Get out of here.
good with
That's
that.
right. That's right.
Aaron, what do you expect to see from this UNC team today against Wagner?
I expect them to, come back after a really ugly game against NC State and dominate Wagner as you would expect a 1 seed to dominate a 16, as long as they play their brand of basketball. I think they win by like 25 plus easy.
Des, is it fair to put a number on a game like this of 25 points?
Well, FanDuel certainly has, so it's fair.
Yeah, and that's legal in North Carolina now. So, yeah, I mean, it's a 1 versus a 16, and I don't think Carolina was the fourth one. I felt like they had moved up, even with the loss to NC State in the tournament. I felt like they had moved up to that third 1 seed. So, Wagner just played night before last, or no, they played
Tuesday.
Yeah, they played Tuesday. So, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, Carolina better watch out for Wagner, but I don't think it'll be a tight game by any means. If anything, Carolina probably use the tune-up and play some of the back end of their bench as they get deeper into it. I don't think they'll blow them out by 45 or anything like that, but I do feel like Carolina will be fine. Like it really starts second round where they might see Mississippi State or Michigan State and Tom Izzo. So I don't think they'll look past Wagner. Wagner might give them a punch here in the very beginning of the game, but I won't be surprised if Carolina comes out punching first and just puts this thing away early like they've done the majority of the games they've played the past 2 months. So I think the NC State game was an outlier. I think they'll revert back to the mean of what they've been all year. Good defense, good 3-point shooting, RJ Davis doing RJ Davis things, and I think they'll be just fine.
And mentioning being favored by DraftKings currently has UNC as a 24.5 point favorite. So pretty spot on right there. We'll see what happens. And UNC might not need to look ahead past this game, but we're going to. We need to see how legitimate this UNC team can actually go in this tournament. I'm sure we've all filled out our brackets before, and later on the show, we'll reveal our Final Four and our winners. But Isaac, how far do you see this Tar Heel team going?
It's a great question, Mike. I mean, here's the thing for me. North Carolina is not the best team in this tournament. To me, that goes to either UConn or Houston, despite what happened to Houston in the Big 12 championship, by the way. But North Carolina is one of the few teams in the tournament good enough to be the last team standing, to me, because all the pieces complement each other well. And that happens when Carolina is RJ Davis centric, but not RJ Davis reliant. I think that's a critical nuance of what the Tar Heels need to be. For me, second weekend is the minimum expectation, but I had gone through and done the research on it this week. Of the 17 previous times Carolina had been a 1 seed, they've made at least the Elite 8 in 13 of those seasons. So for me to define this as a success, Elite 8 is the at least goal. And then after that, it's such a crapshoot in a one-off tournament that anything else beyond that is icing on the cake. But Elite 8 would be success, in my opinion.
That's why we call it March Madness, Isaac.
That's right, exactly.
It's you can have just this one bracket buster that just completely ruins your bracket. Usually for me, it's that whatever game is first played. Aaron, how far do you see this UNC team going?
They obviously have championship aspirations. They've been one of the best teams in the country for a long time. I'd be disappointed with anything less than like Sweet 16. And even then for a team like Carolina, you expect like a Final Four championship push anytime they're in a tournament. But yeah, no, they definitely have a couple hard games to get out of their region.
Yeah, and let's talk about that region. Des, you mentioned, UNC was probably going to be put up against Arizona in their region. They'll meet up in the West if they do both make it to the Elite 8. Is Arizona their biggest threat in this region?
Yeah, I mean, just looking through it, I would say it's Arizona. That's why they kind of matched it this way. Obviously, the NCAA wants to see Carolina and Arizona in the Elite 8. Going back to the previous question, though, I'm disappointed if they don't at least make it to the Final Four. Like, they're a 1 seed. Like, if Carolina's a 1 seed, I expect them to make it out of their region. Like, because they're not a 1 seed every year. And if they are a 1 seed, they're usually a pretty formidable version of the Tar Heels. So I was trying to pull up the actual brackets here. And if I could pull them up so I could see who else is in the West.
They'd play St. Mary's in the Sweet 16.
St. Mary's is in there. St. Mary's is
or Alabama
interesting.
Or Grand Canyon.
Or Grand.
I don't know about. Yeah, I don't know if that one's not fly. I'm pulling. Pull up the bracket here for us real quick. Yeah, Arizona, and even Arizona, I feel like Carolina's a better team than that Arizona team is. So if Carolina plays Carolina's game, the only team in the entire bracket that I feel like can beat Carolina with Carolina playing their own game is UConn. Everybody else, I feel like if Carolina's on top of their game, they can beat whoever else it is that are playing in this entire field if they're on their game. If they're playing defense, if they're guarding the three-point line, if they're shooting threes and hitting them, playing through Armando Bacot, and like Isaac said, not being reliant on RJ Davis, but allowing the offense to flow through RJ Davis. RJ typically, he has a knack of knowing when to step up, which I've loved, especially this year. He seems to know when he needs to go for the big shot and when he needs to kind of facilitate it, the offense through somebody else. And as long as they're doing all that stuff, from what I've seen from Carolina, they'll be okay. They're a second half team too. So like if they're tied or down one or whatever, not to Wagner, but in the first half going into halftime, typically they press the gas as soon as they come out the locker room and they go, and they've done it all year. But looking in that West, you got that Mississippi State, Michigan State game in the second round could be kind of a trap game for Carolina. After that, Charleston is interesting. I think I picked them to advance a couple of rounds because I do work for North Carolina A&T, and they're in the same conference, the CAA. So I've done some Charleston games. They're actually really good. I'm pretty sure they won that conference, if I'm not mistaken.
And Alabama's offense is so elite, but their defense is terrible. Yeah. There are only 11 teams in the entire tournament whose defense is rated worse at KenPom than Alabama, and they're all 12 seeds or worse.
Wow. So keep an eye on that one. So you got 15 minutes to change your brackets if you want to flip it. But I did have Charleston
mine in pins, so
and then the bottom part there, Baylor's not as good as they were 2 years ago. I don't even know why Clemson is a 6 seed, to be honest. That New Mexico team might beat them first round. Everything else looks navigatable. Navigatable, is that a word? Navigatable?
Yeah.
That sounds right. Okay.
We'll make it a word.
All right. So, I don't really see any reason why Carolina shouldn't get to the Final Four other than Carolina. If Carolina doesn't play their game, then they can potentially fall. But if they're on top of their game, I don't see a threat in this region, including Arizona.
We'll have to see how it plays out. And tomorrow we'll have Josh Burton from Everything College Basketball, and Trevor Everett will be back on Out Pocket. He's the host of the 2 Pointers podcast, and we'll break down that UNC game and look more into the Friday's games. But it seems like every year, guys, there is a 2 seed that will fall to a 15 seed. It never fails. We have 3 of those playing today. We have Arizona versus Long Beach State. We have Iowa State versus South Dakota State. And then we have Tennessee versus St. Peter. So I wanted to pose to you guys, if you had to pick any of those 2 seeds, who is more likely to fall in today's games? Isaac?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're spot on, Mike. We have had a 15 over a 2 in each of the last 3 tournaments. So it really has been happening a lot lately. Unfortunately for me, if I was having to pick one, it would be tomorrow's 15-2 game, Western Kentucky over Marquette. But so if you're limiting me to today's games, I'm going to go South Dakota State over Iowa State. This is look, Vegas is helping us out here. This is the smallest point spread of the 3 today, 15.5. But for South Dakota State, they have strong offensive numbers. They're 19th nationally in effective field goal percentage, 18th from 2, 47th from 3. So that's where their hopes lie. But the problem is that Iowa State is rated as the number 1 defense in the nation at KenPom and other predictive metrics. And so where South Dakota State shines is part of Iowa State's strength as well. But if you're asking me to find a needle in the haystack, that's the one I'm looking for.
I'm glad you found that needle because I picked South Dakota State in my bracket to pull off that upset. Aaron, what's your 2 seed falling today?
Man, I just don't. I don't see Iowa State losing. I mean, I think all these teams will win. I think I would expect Iowa State to go pretty deep in this tournament. I think they're really good. If I had to pick one, Long Beach State, ride momentum from conference championship win. as we've seen, former UNC player Caleb Love, he can be inconsistent at times. So it's not out of the question that he has a bad shooting night, and Long Beach State capitalizes off that and gets an upset.
Caleb Love going down would make me happy. It wouldn't make my bracket happy. That's the only issue I have. Des, which 2 seed do you think is in most jeopardy of losing today?
I don't know if any of them are. So I'm looking at the 3 because I've got all 3 of these 2 seeds going pretty deep. Actually, I think I have Carolina facing Tennessee in the national championship game. So I guess Arizona for all the reasons that Aaron just laid out, but I think they'll be okay. They should be okay in theory. Arizona was battling for a 1 seed this time last week, so they should be able to get past Long Beach State. That's like a December game, you know what I mean? Like a non-conference, come get the bag type of game. Like that's what that feels like. I don't think unless South Dakota State is like one of these teams that shoots like 63s or something, and they shoot like 45% from 3, and we haven't heard of them like all year or whatever. Iowa State's one of the best defensive teams in the country. I did not expect what they did to Houston last week. That was out of nowhere. Like that literally put them on my radar. I was like, oh, okay, because I know about Houston, but I didn't know Iowa State was doing this. So I don't know if I could pick them. I guess out of these 3, if I had to pick one, it might be Tennessee. They feel extremely reliant on Dalton Connect in terms of he has to be on for them to really comfortably win. And they've had some lapses defensively this year. Again, our Tar Heels dropped 50 on them in a half earlier this year and 100 as a total. I know they caught up a little bit score-wise towards the end, but they can be had. So I think I'd say Tennessee. St. Peter's, it's a name that Carolina fans recognize. They went on that Cinderella run a couple of years back when we got to the Final Four. They were in our pathway in our region. So,
well, in that year, who did St. Peter's beat in their first game?
Kentucky.
Remember? Kentucky,
Yeah.
a high-level SEC team as a 15 seed. So there's precedent.
So I would probably go Tennessee, St. Peter's then, because St. Peter's has kind of been there before. They know they can do it. They've already done it. So confidence is a great smelling cologne in March. So I'll go with Tennessee, St. Peter's.
And with Tennessee and Arizona, I think they're similar. We've mentioned it already. Arizona, if Caleb Love is playing at a high level, they're hard to beat. But when he struggles, it's tough. Same with Tennessee and Connect. But I actually have two seeds falling today in my bracket. I have St. Peter's beating Tennessee, and I have South Dakota State beating Iowa State.
Wow.
Especially after Iowa State beat Houston. Like, I just think that's going to be in their mind, and they're going to like look past them. And I think South Dakota State does it. Now, granted, this isn't that aged well segment that we'll get to a little later in the show, but with my luck, there's where my bracket falls.
Mike, do you know the Long Beach State story? Do you know what happened to them last week?
What?
So they fired their coach on Monday before their conference tournament. Don Monson went on to win their conference tournament, and then now making it on in. By the way, Dan Monson used to be the coach at Gonzaga, where Tommy Lloyd was assistant forever to Mark Few, who's the head coach at Arizona, who they're now playing in Salt Lake City, where Gonzaga also is playing today. So it's like all 3 of these dudes are together in that same pod. It's wild.
So if I have Arizona going pretty deep, I might be in trouble.
No, you're good.
Okay. I'll feel good about that. There's a couple other games I want to just quickly hit. Oregon at South Carolina today. Currently, Oregon is favored by 1.5 points. Isaac, I'm going to throw this game at you. Who do you think wins this one?
I've got South Carolina pulling it out. Oregon is only here because they won the final Pac-12 championship ever. They do have some dudes in Fale Dante. They've got a freshman named Jackson Shelstad that I've loved watching this year. But South Carolina, man, what a cool story. Picked dead last in the SEC preseason and wind up tied for second. Lamont Paris, a great job in year 2 after losing an NBA draft pick in Gigi Jackson. And so great stuff. I love watching Michi Johnson. He's the difference in this game.
Okay. Aaron, your game is NC State at Texas Tech. Well, it's not at, but it's NC State, Texas Tech, 6 seed versus 11 seed.
My gut tells me State. They're riding high. They dominated one of the best teams in the country in the ACC championship, made it look easy for the last 15 minutes of the game. So my gut is they get a win.
All right. Aaron's gut is the DJs move forward. I already know Dez's take on that from the show a couple days ago. He caught some backlash on social media from that. So I'm going to throw out the game not many people are looking at, but Oakland and Kentucky.
I think Kentucky should win this, but it's gonna be one of those games where I've said all year, really ever since we saw them earlier in the year. I'm very leery of the teams that shoot a lot of threes, and that's what Kentucky kind of lives and dies on as their 3-point shooting, and they've kind of leaned into it this year. But if they have a game where they're just like off, which you can easily be in college basketball, where you're just not hitting threes. Carolina just had it Saturday night against NC State. They shot 26% from three. That's pretty much the story of the game. They just couldn't hit a three. If Kentucky has something like that, they can be had by pretty much anybody in this tournament. But I don't think they'll lose to Oakland. Would it surprise me? No, but I don't think they'll lose to Oakland first round.
He doesn't think they lose to Oakland first round. In my bracket,
Opening
I actually
round,
do
whatever
have.
we're calling it now. Yeah,
I actually do have Oakland beating Kentucky. That's why I
want
wanted
to see
to
your
bring it up.
bracket, because your bracket, it sounds like it's all over the place. Like,
Okay, is that March Madness or what? Like,
it's impossible to
brackets-
predict.
It's madness. It might be too
impossible
much
to predict
madness though.
Look, the past 2 years, I have thrown my bracket away by like 4:00 Thursday. Like, especially last year because Purdue lost early. Like, it messed up everybody's bracket in America. At that point, it was just like half my teams are out. Like, it's all these mid majors that are winning this stuff, and then when the mid majors win the opening rounds, everybody kind of forgets. It kind of makes the next weekend kind of because then you've got St. Peter's and you've got somebody like a Long Beach State or whoever that made a little run, a Florida Atlantic, and like, do you really want to see those teams in the Sweet 16, Elite 8?
No, you want to see
big
these
boys?
big blue bloods.
Yeah,
you
so
want to see the names.
So
I always think it's really cool when a mid-major makes a run like that. I enjoy watching that because it's just better storyline.
2 years ago, Carolina had to kind of go through a couple of those Cinderella teams, and it kind of, to be honest, it helped Carolina get to the fun, because Carolina was an 8 seed that year and barely got into the tournament. And then Blessed didn't have to see Kentucky in the second round, didn't have to see who do we play in the Elite 8, Isaac? It was
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's, yeah. So we played St. Peter's. There was somebody else in our region we weren't supposed to play.
It was Baylor in the second game, and then in the Sweet 16 was UCLA. That was a tough game.
Yeah. And then they had St. Peter's, and it probably should have been Kentucky. So it's just the nature of March Madness. It's going to happen to somebody probably today. I just don't know who it is. I thought it was going to be what did I say it was going to go? UConn. Actually, I'm saying UConn's going to lose early, but
You did say that.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody's fill out a bracket, and that's what they look at. Whether you're a college basketball fan or not, it's really fun. Do you guys see a bracket buster either today or tomorrow? Isaac?
Yeah, 100%. One of the last games of tonight. The Kansas Jayhawks are going down, baby. Here's the problem. Kansas has been their starting five. I'd put them up against any starting five in the country outside of shooting guard, where they've struggled to get production all year long. But Hunter Dickinson goes down with that shoulder injury last regular season game. Kevin McCullough is out. Even before we knew Kevin McCullough was out, I was already picking Samford. Why? Because they play what we call Bucky ball. That's named after their head coach, Bucky McMillan. They are one of the most up-tempo teams in the nation. They have a ton of depth. They press. They give you different pressure looks. They're going to wear out a Kansas team that is now even more shallow than they already were in terms of depth. Give me the Samford Bulldogs, not only moving on to beat Kansas tonight, but then beating Gonzaga and going to the Sweet 16 next weekend.
Oh, my.
Wow, that's a bracket buster. Aaron?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say Samford too, but another one.
Sorry, Aaron.
I also have JMU, and as an App State student, that it hurts to give them any credit, but they're a really good basketball team. I could easily see them going on a little run, but I also actually have a McNeese beating Gonzaga and playing Samford in the round of 32.
Yeah, I got McNeese beating Gonzaga as well. And as an App fan, but also as a Duke fan, because if JMU wins, they'll play the winner of Duke Vermont. I would absolutely I think we'll just put Out of Pocket on like a 4-week delay. Kind of suspend the show. If Duke loses to JMU, I'll be so frustrated. Des, who's your bracket buster?
Well, get ready, buddy, because I think that's going to be it. If I'm looking at these in here,
do you want Out of Pocket or?
I don't trust this Duke team, man. Neither should you. Like, look at the evidence. Look at the resume from this year. It would not surprise me if Duke lost to Vermont. It wouldn't surprise me if they lost to James Madison or Wisconsin. Like, I don't really expect them to get past the opening weekend. They just don't have any rim protection, and they kind of shy away from contact in the paint. And it's March. This isn't something that they can look at the tape of the ACC tournament and go home and be like, oh, okay, let's fix this. And then they roll out to the tournament and they're completely different. You are what you are at this point of the season. Duke is what they is. Believe what your eyes have shown you. That's why I'm picking against NC State. Like, I'm not going to let 5 days of the ACC tournament erase what I saw from State for 3 months through the ACC regular season. Eventually, all these teams revert back to what they are. And so I'm thinking it might – now, Duke doesn't play till tomorrow. They play Friday, and the bracket I'm looking at doesn't have the times for when people are playing or whatever, so it's harder for me to say who's going to lose today. But if I had to pick one bracket buster today, it'd probably be that Tennessee-St. Peter's game.
Yeah.
But St. Peter's might be able to pull something off. If Tennessee, something happens and Connect can't get going, maybe that's the one.
And a lot of people may have Tennessee in their Final Four, and we have a couple more minutes left on the show, so we'll get through this That Aged Well segment. And I don't think anybody's brackets ever age well, but guys, I wanted to bring it up. Who is your Final Four, and who is winning the whole thing? Isaac, go ahead.
Well, I'll just start off with a kind of, I guess, stunner right out of the gate. Here's the truth we all need to know. Since Florida repeated in 2007, no reigning national champion has made it past the Sweet 16 every single year since 07. That is true. That means UConn is not coming out of the East bracket. Give me Iowa State. Give me North Carolina out of the West. I've got Houston in the South and Tennessee in the Midwest.
Okay, and who's your winner?
I've got Houston over North Carolina in the national championship game. I think those guards of Jamal Schade, man, they've just got so much size and athleticism. I think they're able to bother RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau in the national championship and get that championship for Kelvin Sampson.
Oh, wow. That would be huge. Aaron, what's your Final Four and your tournament winner?
I have Iowa State making it out of the East, North Carolina out of the West, then Marquette and Tennessee. I have Iowa State upsetting the Tar Heels, and then Tennessee beating Marquette and Iowa State winning the national championship.
He's got Iowa State winning the title. I don't have them beating South Dakota State in the first round. One of us is going to be unhappy. Des, what's your Final Four and your winner?
My Final Four is actually the same as Isaac's, and is the exact same reasons. Like I said, I don't trust UConn to get past the second round for all the reasons Isaac just said. No one's done it since 2007. And not to mention, they're in the toughest region. They've got 3 Power 5 conference champions in this region, plus 2 other teams that were in the Final Four with them last year, all in the East for some reason. And UConn's supposed to be the number 1 overall seed. So I've got Iowa State coming out of the East. I've got Carolina coming out of the West. I've got Tennessee coming out of the Midwest and Houston coming out of the South. I've got Carolina defeating Tennessee in the national championship.
Okay. So Isaac's got Houston, Aaron's got Iowa State, and Des, of course, has Tennessee and UNC in the finals. For me, I agree. UConn's not making it out of the first weekend because I have them losing to Florida Atlantic, and Florida Atlantic makes a run to the Final Four. And then I got UNC losing to Arizona in the Elite 8, so Arizona's in the Final Four. I got Houston in my Final Four. I think that's pretty consistent for the most part. I know Aaron had Marquette. And then I had Purdue. I was back and forth. I thought Purdue might be an early exit, but I can't bet against Zach Edey because Purdue is actually going to beat Houston. Purdue's going to beat Arizona, and Zach Edey is going to win a national championship. And that's my bracket. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if, quote unquote, any of these brackets aged well. If any of your brackets age well, let us know. Again, tomorrow we'll be live at 11:30, a special time, a.m. Eastern time, with Josh Burton from Everything College Basketball, with Trevor Everett from the 2 Pointers podcast. But for today, it's been your host, Michael Davis, Aaron Schneider, Isaac Schade. Go follow his stuff with Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Hills Hoops. As you can tell, very knowledgeable, a really good resource for college basketball. And your producer, Desmond Johnson, all the stuff he's doing on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel. Subscribe. We will see you guys back tomorrow, special time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, for Out Pocket with Michael Davis, talking some more March Madness. We'll see you then.